Hi, my name is Jesse Ellert. I help companies build brands and design their logos. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Dumbo Disney logo and how I approach my redesign of it. I think there's a lot we can all learn from Disney and the way that they approach logo design and just their designs in general. What I want is something that works, that's easily usable for many different applications that I can hand to someone and they can just use it and go forward. In my opinion, the more detailed, the worse. The more detail in a logo, usually the less flexible it's going to be. It's kind of what I was talking about with having the wood behind it. It just doesn't, it works if in specific situations, but you need that base. Like one thing that Disney doesn't do is they don't ignore the fact that they still have the nice cohesive logo that works with a lot of different applications, but then you add the flair later, right? You add that texture, you add that gold trim, you add those bevels, right? You don't start with that, and you don't start with that in mind. That's just the pizzazz that adds to it. What I first like to do is kind of look at typefaces. You can see here that they have that circus feel, and I'm gonna go a little bit away from that because it's already been done. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just looking at a few different typefaces, and me already, I know what I want. I want in my head, I want it to both be kind of dancing a little bit, right? I want it to be light, but I want it to be heavy at the same time. So it's kind of at odds with each other because, you know, a flying elephant. So I'm looking at a couple different typefaces here, just to kind of feel it out. And let's see, this one is the Pacific Rim, or Pacifico regular, and it's nice. It's kind of got that scripty feel to it. And then we have more of I kind of like this D here, and this kind of reminds me of the old Dumbo logo where they kind of have that little serif going on there. And I think it doesn't have it in this picture, but he had something like that on his head in the movies. This is the one I like the most. I just like how it dances along, like but it's still heavy. At this point, I start to just do a bunch of different ideas. Now I'm in idea mode, and I kind of want to flesh things out as much as possible. I'm not afraid of failing at this point. I'm not afraid of it looking bad. I just want to go in and have as many different directions as possible. I wanted to make it look really, basically go from one spectrum to the other and see what I can do, and then probably go somewhere in the middle. These are a few different options that I finally came up with that I liked the most after the process that I had. I'd like you to comment below and let me know which is your favorite logo design. Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? Each one kind of had their own merits in my opinion, and it's just kind of me trying to figure out, and I like the idea of the shadow. Typeface is kind of coming up and going to the right. This one's a little bit more heavier in the bottom left. Personally, I didn't like how it was just the shadow of the feather. This one's probably my second favorite. And then finally, the second one was my favorite, so that's the one I decided to go with and keep running with, right? At this point, it's not done. I'm just kind of mocking it up and playing and seeing if it's gonna work. If we go in here, this was my first feather, and you can see there's detail here, and then up top here, you can see there's a lot of detail up in here. And really what ends up happening is it gets lost when you zoom out. And actually, if I compare the two when I zoom out, this one almost starts looking like a pepper, whereas the bottom one, it's a little thicker and a little more feather-like. even though it's a heavy feather, I also wanted to make it match the type. Right, I want it to be like this type is thicker. I want this one to be thicker as well. And as I go in here, you can see that. Something else, the reason why I actually like this typeface more is because I really liked this right here. It reminded me of an elephant trunk, and that he was holding onto it. With any logo, you want them all to be scalable. You want it to not have too much detail. You want it to be really flexible, but you also want to bring that it factor, right? That's where like the brand starts coming in, and the reflection of what it is starts coming in. So the feather was kind of a nod to that with the little trunk. And you don't need it to be like apparent or super apparent. It just has to be like subtle nods, and you only need one or two in any kind of logo design to have that thought process in there. And so that's the one that I put in there so far. And let's look at the other one. So this is the typeface right off the bat. And you can see on the left here, it's very straight. And it's also a little bit more spread out. You can see that as well when I put it under it. And kind of match it up here. These are the two original, and this was what I came to in the final. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to adjust the tracking, and I made it a little bit tighter. And I also wanted the O to be the highest letter coming up from the baseline for the X height. And I wanted, I made the D a little bit heavier. And I wanted it to almost have like a dancing effect. So it's kind of like coming up and going down a bit, and then going up, and then it comes down a bit, and then it goes way up there. And then I'll put the feather right there. And in that way, it's kind of directing your eye from left to right. It directs it so you go through it, right? So you start because we read from left to right, you start at the left, you go to the right, and it's going upwards. Because upwards is positive from left to right, and then also upwards because he's flying. So that was another little like nod I wanted to put in there that was reflected of Dumbo. So we talked about our history here. We talked about what kind of type I chose. We talked about exploring a few different ideas. We got to the feather and why I wanted to make it a little thicker and not have the most detail. A lot of the detail gets lost. Then we talked about how I wanted it to flow and the kerning of it all. What I ended up achieving was getting to this. So this would be what I call a base logo. It's the very base start of it. And actually, to me, there's still too much detail into it. If I was going to use this for maybe box art or something like that, or cover art, or maybe you're making a poster, I like the idea of it being very, very flexible. I put this little circle in there, or oval, and I would remove that as well. I just prefer it in there because I liked how it looked a little bit better on when I put it on Instagram. If I was gonna do it for a business or make this for a company, I wouldn't add that extra detail. It makes it not as flexible. I don't work with color till near the end. Like I might have some color ideas that I want to work with, but when you're looking at logo design, start with your base, and this is the base. I'm not adding any flair. It has to work in black and white first for it to look good and work. And it's flexibility. If it can be used in black and white, then you can start adding color into it. So after I got to this point, that's when I started looking into color and different color ideas. I like the idea of it being kind of a brighter blue. It felt a little bit more elephant-esque. And then as well with the darker to make it stand out a little bit more. And if I did include the ground, I would put it on the bottom a little darker so it looks a little bit more like the shadow. The reason why I think it works really well is because, if I zoom out here, easy to read from left to right, then I also focus on keeping it scalable. So meaning this is pretty small here, right? We're looking at this, but I can still read it. Third, I want there to be things that fit and flow and just on brand. What I have is I have it going up in an upward arc. If I look at the baseline here, you can see it's dancing as it goes along. The feather, it's a nod to having the feather. There's even like a little nod with the trunk coming in, where he's holding on to it as he's flying. And then If I wanted to include this just as an extra, there's the ground kind of as it's lifting off of it. Okay, so hopefully you learned a little bit of something. I do offer one-on-one consultations where I specialize in logos, branding, and business. If you'd like to talk further, I'll leave a link to my website below. If you like this video, like it, subscribe if you haven't already, and you guys know what to do.